Hey y'all, it's Nikki. Check this out. The Holsworth Center and the Texas Book Festival are partnering up to host a conversation with author Imani Perry on February 3rd for their Place the Ladder series, where dynamic leaders talk to Holsworth's president, Lindsay Horton. The conversation and reception will take place at Holsworth's campus on Lake Austin from 5 to 7 p.m. Tickets are only $35, and they come with Perry's latest book. So head over to placetheladder.org to get your tickets. That's placetheladder.org. Today on CityCast Austin, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. may have only visited Austin once during his lifetime, but he left his imprint all over this city, from MLK Boulevard to the Dr. King statue at UT campus and beyond. Eastside historian Harrison Eppright knows all about it and is here to tell us what Austin was like during MLK's time. And just a warning, you will hear the N-word in this episode because of its relevance to the conversation. It's Thursday, January 16th. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, I am here today with Harrison Eppright, Eastside History Guide, Visit Austin's Manager of Visitor Services and Tour Ambassador, and Tour Docent for Six Square, Austin's Black Cultural District. So tell us about your connection to Austin, specifically how it pertains to your knowledge of MLK.
Okay, yes. I am a native Austinite. I was born and raised in East Austin. I was born, I can just give you the year. I was born in 1955. So I heard about MLK. I heard about Dr. Martin Luther King during his lifetime, and have, certainly heard a whole lot more, since his passing. But I can say that Austin, when I was born in 1955, Austin was a racially segregated city, even though Austin was considered a good city where Black people were concerned. It was considered a good city to live in. So I grew up in Austin, grew up in East Austin. Because at that time, of course, most Blacks lived either in East Austin, or maybe a handful of us lived in South Austin or lived out in North Austin in what was called St. John.
Right. Yeah.
I remember being that I was born in 1955. I remember segregation in the face. And I remember, too, how mom and dad tried their best to shield us from the worst aspects of racial segregation. And my parents were no exception. Most Black parents tried to shield their children from racial segregation. I hope I didn't say integration. Racial segregation, yes.
I mean, I was born and raised here, too. And my mom talks about a similar experience of just like watching the city change over the years. So now it's almost MLK Day.
Yes.
And, as everyone knows, it's the day that we celebrate the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And you said that this year is even more important than usual. So Tell us why.
I believe this year is even more important than usual because the MLK Day celebration, the official MLK Day, is Monday, January 20th. Also, Monday, January 20th, this happens to be 2025. This also happens to be the year that the new president is inaugurated. Unfortunately, the new president is not my choice. He is a blatant racist, and he will be once again, the president of the United States. So it's mighty important that we stand up against this person by marching, by boycotting the inaugural. Don't even bother to watch it on television or listen on the radio or watch over the internet. Boycott that. Do good things for the community. Be the absolute antithesis of what this man, of what Donald Trump represents. And be an example of what Dr. King and Coretta King and his family and millions others all across this country and the world represent.
I love it. I love it. I love to hear. I love it. I love this idea of kind of boycotting the inauguration by serving
Yeah.
and and marching and celebrating.
I read in the New York Times today that Michelle Obama is boycotting the inauguration.
I love that.
Yes, she would say when they go low, we go high. Apparently, she's saying this year when they go low, we go no way.
We don't go
That's
at
me
all.
saying. That's right. That's me saying that.
I
That she
love
would
it.
say. Yeah, yeah.
So I want to hear about some of the impacts of MLK Jr. on Austin and Austin's civil rights movement. What can you tell us about that? What was that time like here as you were growing up?
We grew up in East Austin because that was the only place where my folks could buy a house, lest they, maybe moved out to St. John in North Austin at the time, North Austin, or maybe moved to a neighborhood, some neighborhoods in South Austin or Southeast Austin.
Right.
Knowing that that was the only place where we could buy a house, seeing that the roads in East Austin, I'd say maybe probably 50% of the streets in East Austin were paved. The rest were poorly either unpaved or poorly grade paved street. Noticing how people of all whatever social economic background, we all live side by side or within a few blocks of one another. So they talk about, how, and I get tired of hearing this, how, black people especially need good role models. Everybody needs a good role model. And we definitely had role models of whatever stripe, whether they were rich, whether they were middle class, whether they were working class, what have you. We had good role models. So and so because we all lived either side by side or within a few blocks of one another. What I remember about the changes, the gradual changes that I saw during the lifetime of Dr. King, coinciding also with the presidencies of John Kennedy and later and Lyndon Baines Johnson, I saw gradual changes. I saw where even though the Austin's independent school district was on paper, you had freedom of choice where you could go to school. But in actuality, if you wish to go to a school outside of your boundaries, you had to get permission from the Austin Independent School District in order to do that.
Right.
And,
Yep.
and even though I started out going to the Mary Jane Sims Elementary School
I know
over
Sims. Yeah.
that's right. Yes, over at East 12th and Springdale Road. I went there from first through fourth grades. By fifth grade, Mom got permission for me to go to the John B. Wynn Elementary School. Now, the John B. Wynn
Oh.
Elementary School back in those days, it was not located where the present John B. Wynn is.
Yeah, at all.
That's right. This particular John B. Wynn, the original, was located at the intersections of, at the time, East 19th Street and the access road of Interstate Highway 35. Beautiful old
Wow.
building, first completed 1907 with an addition added in 1948. Now, that was the first truly racially integrated school that I attended in a neighborhood that was within the boundaries of the Negro District, as the Negro District was drawn up in 1928. With the northern boundary of the Negro District being Manor Road, the eastern boundary being Loop 111, better known as Airport Boulevard, the southern boundary being East 7th Street, and the western boundary being, back in the day, East Avenue. Now the access road of I-35, but in 1928, we did not have an interstate highway system.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
John B. Wynn was located there, and John B. Wynn gradually it desegregated. It was an interesting thing because there were still a number of white people. Just because the area was designated as a Negro district, well, prior to that, it was an area where it's an area where people of German descent, people of Swedish descent once lived. There were some black neighborhoods in that area as well, kind of like blacks and whites lived like within hailing distance of one another
For the
back
first time.
then. That's correct. That's correct. So even in 1965, when I first went to John B. Wynn, there were still a number of white families who still lived in the area, while and a large number of black families and Hispanic families within that area back at the time.
So that was around. So essentially, it's like once MLK started coming through, that's you started to see firsthand the integration in schools in the Negro district.
Yes, I started
Wow.
seeing that. Even though technically the Austin Independent School District, you had freedom of choice technically by
Technically.
1955, 1 year after the Brown versus Topeka Board of Education
Yeah.
decision was decided in favor of Black people or in favor of the NAACP.
So let's talk about that because I want before and after MLK, we're kind of getting into that now, and it seems like before, we all know, or not all of us, but most Black people, especially in the city, know that redlining created the Negro district, and so,
Yes,
we know before MLK, mostly my mom tells me, to your point, like it was all black people, and there were just like sprinkling of other races and other
yes,
people there. By the time I came along, by the time I started growing up, it was still predominantly all black people, a few Latine people, and then like
yes.
poor white musicians.
Hmm.
And that was that. It was
Hmm.
still a bustling black community. So what do you feel like, what were some big changes other than the integration of schools? What other big changes did you see after MLK's, like, stamp?
MLK's imprint, was certainly apparent after the 1956 Montgomery bus boycott. And certainly, I saw that imprint, even during MLK's lifetime. And remember too, now the civil rights movement was generations and generations and generations, especially since the end of the Civil War with Reconstruction, and then after Reconstruction, unfortunately, was basically killed, and that led
It
to
was killed.
gradual segregation and legalized segregation and separation of the races. But there were still folks that were still fighting, still rebelling against that system. It really, the civil rights struggle here in America really goes back to before 1619.
And still happening. Yeah.
It's still happening, but I think the genius of Dr. King was that, and working with established organizations like the NAACP, the National Urban League, CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, National Council of Negro Women. Don't forget Dorothy Height. Don't forget Black women.
Yep.
The middle class got involved. It wasn't just the upper classes, but the middle classes, and in fact, the working classes were involved as well in the civil rights struggle. Think Fannie Lou Hamer in
Yep.
Mississippi, and the Mississippi Freedom Party. Fannie Lou Hamer said exactly basically what Rosa Parks said when she refused to give up her seat on that Montgomery bus. Basically, she was saying, just like Fannie Lou Hamer later said, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Right.
That's right.
Right. And so I feel like when I talk to my mom about stuff like this, she says that one of some of the things that she noticed outright was the resistance. So she
Hmm.
noticed resistance, from not just white people in the city,
Hmm.
but just like even in some cases black people,
Oh, yes.
the resistance of like the change. Like, so now
Yes.
there weren't different water fountains, not like little
Hmm.
subtle differences, but the resistance was the thing that stuck out for her the most.
Hmm.
Do you remember that type of resistance as things were changing in the city?
I do remember resistance. I do remember in elementary school at John B. Wynn, and certainly when I got to the old Allen Junior High School, which was down on Gonzales Street in the Go Valley area, still part of East Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I would call that Mexican East Austin, though there were a lot of blacks who lived there, as well as a number of whites who lived in Go Valley in that area. I remember being called nigger at John B. Wynn at the old Allen Junior High School. So I remember that kind of resistance.
I think that we look at Austin now, and in Austin, we definitely tout ourselves as this wonderful, diverse, like, weird place to
Mhm.
be. But I
Yeah.
remember
Mhm.
specifically when I was younger, so I went to school at the LL Campbell, the old LL Campbell, not the one that
Mhm.
is in Holy Cross now, but the one
Yeah,
that was on Chacon.
that's
I went
right.
to that LL Campbell, and I remember for a while they bussed us over so that
Hmm.
we can fill quotas. They took like 50 little black kids and bussed us over to, like, I went to Brackerwoods over off of
Yes.
38th Street, and they
Hmm.
bussed white kids into our neighborhood. And
Yeah.
I remember vividly the first time somebody called me nigger with a hard ER. I remember that.
Yeah.
That was not in the
No.
50s.
No. No.
That
No.
was in the 80s. That was not in the
Yeah.
50s. So it's like, I think it's important for Austin to remember that these things absolutely positively happen and are still happening.
Yes, it's also important for Austinites to remember too that after Dr. King was assassinated, the Austin City Council voted for open housing. You had the right to buy a house in any part of the city. If you had the money, you could buy a house in any part of the city. Well, here in Austin, it was true then, it's true today that if City Council passes an ordinance, well, then if you are opposed to that ordinance, you can get a petition going.
Petition, yep.
Yeah, that's correct, and get enough signatures, signatures that are validated to put that issue before the voters of the city. Well, anyway, Austin City Council passed this law, this ordinance in 1968, and members of the business community, members of the real estate community, they circulated petitions, and they got enough signatures to get this put before the voters, and the voters rejected. The voters rejected
Oh,
the open housing ordinance in 1968. Now, this was the same year
no black
that
people in our neighborhood. We're not
that's
having that.
right. That's right. Now, this was the same year that just 2 days after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., on April 6th, King was assassinated on April 4th, Thursday, April 4th, 1968. Well, on Saturday, April 6th, 1968, the city voters went to the polls. It was a school board election, and they approved of the election. They elected Wilhelmina Delco to the school board
What?
in
Oh my
1968.
God.
Yeah, 2 days after Dr. King was assassinated,
That's awesome.
becoming the first. That's right.
What a crazy, complicated city. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like, on one hand, we're voting, people are voting, no, 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 no. We don't want black people on our side of town. And on the other hand, we're voting in Wilhelmina Delco. It's just like such a diverse, crazy, complicated place, I love it.
exactly. Now, in 1969, that was the year after this ordinance was defeated. Well, of the four city council members who voted in favor of the ordinance, Three were defeated, including the mayor, Harry
My
Aiken.
God.
Harry Aiken was defeated.
That's
Harry
amazing.
Aiken was the owner of the Nighthawk restaurants,
I remember
legendary
Nighthawk.
restaurant.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. Mr. Hoover Alexander got his training at the Nighthawk. Hoover Alexander of Hoover's restaurant.
I am it's so not only did they vote against the ordinance, then they voted to get rid of the people that were supporting the ordinance. That
That's
is
correct. That's
wild.
correct. And
That
that
is
also,
wild.
and among those who also was defeated, who supported the ordinance, Emma Long.
Emma Long Park.
That's right. That's right. Formerly City Park. Now
What?
Emma Long, Metropolitan Park. Yeah, Emma Long, legendary Austinite. When she was first elected to city council in 1946, the first woman of a major southern city to be elected to city council in 1946. Also, as we used to say
Wow.
back in those days, a friend of the Negro. Well, she was defeated also. He was defeated also.
Oh
That's
my
right.
God. This
Harry
is
Aiken was
incredible.
defeated. Dick Nichols was not defeated. He was the
Yes.
only one of those who voted for this ordinance who was not defeated.
Wow. Wow. So let's keep talking about this. So in early 70s, after his assassination,
Hmm.
19th Street in Austin was renamed
Yes.
MLK Jr. So
1975.
1975. And do you know anything? Because my mom sometimes still slips up and calls it 19th Street.
Yeah, I was about 19 years old, almost 20, and I just didn't pay that much attention to it, but then but it stayed in the news and more people were talking about it, and certainly people in my family was talking about it, and so I became interested. And at first widespread opposition to it, and then it was
Really?
decided, okay, well then maybe we'll rename East 19th Street for Dr. Martin Luther King, but we'll end it at Interstate Highway 35.
So keep it on the black side.
Yeah, that's right. And I-35 served as that unofficial dividing line. Originally, that was East Avenue, the
Mm-hmm.
western boundary of the Negro District. Well, I-35, unfortunately, is still known today as a racial dividing line.
Yep.
And anyway, so it was okay. We'll rename East 19th Street. We just said 19th Street, but we'll end it at Martin Luther at the frontage road of I-35. Well, people like Dr. J.J. Seabrook, James J. Seabrook, who
Yep.
was a prominent Austin resident. Seabrook said, no, 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 no. As a way of unifying the city, the entire street needs to be renamed in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. There was widespread opposition to that. There was a lot
Wow.
of opposition initially to even just the idea of renaming not any part of East 19th Street for Dr. King. Businesses were opposed. A number of businesses were opposed to it, but I think most of the black businesses on then East 19th Street were not opposed to it. But
Of
there were
course.
some white
Yeah.
businesses on East 19th that were opposed to it. I think this was one of the first times that a major thoroughfare in a city, certainly in the South or the Southwest, would be renamed for a black person.
Right.
And so the opposition to expanding to renaming all of 19th Street East and West for Dr. King was widespread. There are a lot of white businesses west of I-35 that was considered the dividing line. A lot of white businesses were opposed to that. There were some that were in favor of it. And just the idea of naming a street after a black person was just too much for so many people. There was a lot of
Wow.
J.J.
Wow.
Seabrook was in city council chambers, and J.J. Seabrook City council chambers back then, the city council chambers were located over at West 8th and Colorado Street. That's where chambers were located in the old Austin Municipal Building. And J.J. Seabrook fought so hard for the change that for expanding it to include the entirety of 19th Street, East and West, that he suffered a heart attack. He suffered a heart
Are you
attack.
serious?
I'm serious. The ambulance was called. He was taken to Brackenridge. He died at Brackenridge Hospital.
Holy
But yes,
shit.
yes.
Oh my
But he
God.
literally gave his life for the cause.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Talk about ally. Oh my God. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, soon after his death, the city council voted to rename the entirety of East and West 19th Street after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
there was a church on East 19th Street, well, now East Martin Luther King, that was opposed to the name change. It was a black church. It was the 19th Street Baptist Church. Now, they're no longer on East Martin Luther King.
They're over off
They,
of Main Road, right?
yeah, that's right. Now, the reason why they were opposed was because they thought that a monument would have been a better way to honor Dr. King. Not that
Oh.
they were against his efforts.
Okay, okay. So this is a perfect segue into my next question. Because
Yes,
in 1999, there was an MLK Jr. statue erected on UT campus.
yes, that's right.
And do you have any knowledge as to how that happened?
There was talk about erecting an MLK Jr. statue on the campus for years, and I think that the students basically, they raised the money for the erection of that statue. The Black Students Association,
What?
as well as of course other students,
Yeah,
non-black students, and non-black individuals. But they provided the bulk of the money. The University of Texas Board of Regents provided some of the money, but the students raised a lot of the money for
I
the
love
erection
that.
of that statue.
I love that. I love that. Just getting it
Hmm.
done.
That's right. That's right. The students. And every time I go to that statue, I want to cry. And it's crying out of pride and joy.
Yeah,
It means something to me every time I visit it. I am, Dr. King was one of my ancestors. I count him as an ancestor.
of course.
Yeah,
Of
that's
course.
right. And I didn't fully appreciate him in his lifetime. I was not quite 13 when he died suddenly, but
Yeah,
certainly in the aftermath, I've appreciated him, and his legacy in my heart it just it just grows every day. And also not only his legacy, but just the many others, living and dead, in Austin, outside of Austin, who also they were doing the work that he was doing in his lifetime and before he was born, and they continue the work after his death, continuing down to this day. And quite a few of those legends in Austin have already passed on. But there are more legends today that are still
mm-hmm.
doing the work and also expanding the work of
Love it.
Dr. King and Coretta King.
So, is there anything else related to Martin Luther King Day or MLK or his impact on the city
Mhm.
that I didn't ask you about that you want to share?
Yes, well, it's just that the impact on the city, the fact of the civil rights movement, served as the impetus for the women's rights movement, the gay rights movement,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
trans movement, the rights of disabled people. See, that's the one thing, people, racists like to think that black people are only out for themselves. No, that's not true. We have always we've always wanted everybody. We wanted to have the rights. We still want to have the rights, but we never said to others, no, no, you can't. This is our thing. You know,
Right.
you all fight for yourselves.
Right.
We've never done
Exactly.
that. The Black civil rights movement has served as a template for other human rights movements and continues to serve as the template for human rights movements, not only in America, but throughout the world.
I agree. You mentioned that folks should honor MLK by boycotting the inauguration.
For
So,
sure. This
what
blatant racist.
it any thoughts on like the best way to do that? What's the best way to do that? Do you
The
think?
best way to do that is to recommit yourself to involvement in your community. And that means
Yep.
everything. That
Yep.
means don't even be a stranger to your neighbor next door, but remember your neighbors in the community. And the community being Austin, being Texas, being the world. But let's just start small. let's start with Austin. There is plenty of work to do here in Austin, as that old biblical saying goes: the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And with that in mind,
Yes.
get involved, mentor some student, mentor some adult, read to somebody, say hi to your neighbor, vote, vote, vote. Like I said, volunteer in your schools, volunteer in your food programs, volunteer in your
Yeah.
community gardens, whatever it takes.
Love it. I love this. So there is for everyone that's listening, a really small place to start is to come to the MLK March on
Yes,
Monday.
come to the
Show up to the
MLK March.
march.
That's correct.
Yeah, it starts at the statue on UT campus. I believe
Hmm.
I want to say at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I believe so. I
Yeah.
believe so. Nine
Yeah.
o'clock.
So come to the
Hmm.
march, meet some new people.
Yeah, that's right. Meet some new people. That's right. Not only that too, but yeah, meet new people, rededicate yourselves. There's a whole lot of reason to be despair. It's not going to be an easy next 4 years. And to me, the opposition. If the opposition has already started, I'm going to say that the official kickoff of the opposition will be January 20th. And even though the weather is we're slated to have a wintry mix, I'm getting out there and I'm going to show up and show out.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Harrison, thank you so much for being here. This has been just delightful. This has been wonderful.
Mhm.
I'm so glad that we got a chance to chat because you just have so much knowledge about the city. So thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for being
Mhm.
here. I absolutely plan on having you back again
Oh,
because this has
please.
been great.
Good. Excellent. All righty.
That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Harrison Epwright's tours and work in our show notes. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.